hard profession, and he went to the top. And he did it by his own decisions. Beryl helped, of course. But there was nothing gormless about George, although he appeared so in his films. In fact, he was a hard-headed Lancashire lad.
But it's only fair to say that the majority of people who knew George believed that the greatest driving force behind him was his wife, Beryl. Some said that without her, George wouldn't have got anywhere, that he wouldn't have had two halfpennies to rub together. Beryl, the wife who never let him out of her sight, who steered him towards stardom in the early days, who later looked after his hard-won thousands, who handed out his pocket money at the end of the week. Because of her concern for him, and because she certainly knew how hard it was to get to the top and stay there, she'd been a well-known dancer herself before she met George, she was untiring in her efforts to see that he was never underestimated, never underpaid, and never alone, as she herself said.
Wherever George had to go, Beryl had to go too. I just used to say all the time, if you want George, you've got to have me. And they always wanted George, so they had to put up with me.
Joe Hill, manager of the Grand Theatre Bolton, where George first appeared in pantomime in 1932, certainly knew that Beryl was the power behind the throne.
I don't think George was a nitwit, but I do think that he owed quite a lot to the people who were around about him. His mother, his wife Beryl, who was a general manager, personal manager, front of house manager, in fact a general factotum to George. She always saw that his act was presented in a perfect manner. He was immaculately dressed always.
Immaculately dressed always, Beryl insisted. She knew the value of appearances. She also knew that if you want the best, you've got to pay for it. And she did just that to get George started in the world of pantomime. Now, Bert Lohman, Northern Theatre impresario, tells how.
I went over to the Grand Theatre Bolton one week, going back in the dark ages, and George happened to be on the bill, and I'd gone over there to see an act called The Four Brownie Boys. I was going upstairs into the dressing room when Maurice Goodman, the stage manager, came to me and he said, "Look, George has just been to me and told me that he wanted to see you before you left the building. Would you go down into number 1 room?" I said, "Yes." I went down into number 1 room. I said, "Well,